As I understand the story of this film, it is partly based on a short story that you wrote.
Yeah, it's inspired, not really based.
Inspired. Tell the story, if you would.
There's a short story in my last collection, Dillinger in Hollywood, called Keeping Time. That's about a 40-year-old drummer and a 20-year-old band who's wondering, what am I doing here? How did the drummer get to be the responsible one in the band?
Right.
And
conversation that takes place in Austin all the time, as you can imagine. Right, yeah.
So I get to tell a lot of good drummer jokes.
Yeah.
And in the course of the story, he runs into this janitor at the club he's playing, who comes up and says, oh, you wouldn't know it to look at me now, but I used to be Guitar Slim. And there was this rock and roll legend. There actually was a Guitar Slim, was a great, electric guitar player out of New Orleans, is where he kind of made his fame. And he had a big hit in the early 50s called The Things I Used to Do, which I believe was arranged by Ray Charles when he was about 18 years old.
Wow.
And this is the days before rock videos or album covers. It was just a name on a jukebox song.
They didn't know what he looked like, didn't know who he was.
So a lot of people, who could play the guitar were told by their club owner, learn this song, tonight you are Guitar Slim.
You become Guitar Slim. Right.
As a matter of fact, I told this story to Steve Earle, and he said, only recently did he play Albuquerque again and confess that he had been Townes Van Zandt for about a week there.
Oh, is that right?
When,
I don't know. Steve Earle's still pretty good. I would,
he had been touring
that.
with him, and he knew his stuff, and Townes was indisposed. Just as Korea is kind of the forgotten war, there's this little era of American music, this rhythm and blues era, which doesn't really get played on the oldies station. It's kind of in between swing, and Louis Jordan is in there, and all these guys with these honking saxophones, and Big Joe Turner, and the late Ruth Brown, who actually was going to be in Honeydripper, who fell ill and passed actually while we were shooting. But it was a very compact era, and then rock and roll kind of just swept everything away.
Right. So the film then is essentially a telling of the bare bones that you just described. There's a club in Alabama, right?
And Danny Glover plays the proprietor of the Honeydripper Lounge, and he's still, presenting live music, old blues music. He's got a competitor across the street in this little crossroads town of Harmony, Alabama, in the cotton country in the deep South. And they've got a jukebox, and they're playing the newer stuff, and he's still, playing kind of Ma Rainey era blues, and he's doing badly, and he, as he says, he owns the Chicken Man, he owes the Liquor Man, he's stealing power from the electric company, he owes rent to a gangster in Memphis who actually owns the building. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to hold on to something more than the building, which is he's an African-American man in the Deep South in 1950, and he's his own man. He's his own boss, and that's what he's afraid of losing, not so much just the four walls of the club.
Right. So in his case, the act he's going to bring is Guitar Sam.
Well, we call him Guitar Sam in the movie, and he thinks this is going to be his redemption, and the guy doesn't show up. And so the rest of the movie is him building this house of cards, and meanwhile, Gary Clark Jr. of Austin, rolls in on a boxcar with this guitar case in hand, and when you open the guitar case, he thinks this kid is crazy. There's wires hanging on this thing, and there's no hole in it.
Right.
And the hole is where the sound comes out. So this kid is obviously an escapee from a lunatic asylum.
Right. Now the Gary Clark Jr. You mentioned from Austin is actually someone who you came to know here first.
Yeah, when I finish the script, I try not to think of actors when I'm writing. I write the script and then I look at it. And in the case of Honeydripper, the first name that came to me was Danny Glover's got to be in this.
Right.
And then I thought, well, we're going to have to look for a year to find a young African-American guitar player who can play this kind of music or learn to play this kind of music, because that's just not what is happening right now in music.
Right.
And Lewis Black, who's one of the founders of the South by Southwest Festival and one of the editors of the Austin Chronicle, heard about what we were doing and said, he may be too young, but there's a kid down here, I've been seeing him since he was 14 years old, and he can really play this kind of guitar.
Right. And he's from a great musical family.
Yeah, so we came down, we went to the Continental Club, and we saw Gary, and you know, he was incredible on stage, and we kind of caught him in the alley behind the club, and said, so we're going to make a movie, and we need somebody like you to be in it, and you want to read for it? And he said, oh, cool. And, you know, so my friend Lizzie Martinez lives here in Austin, and so he came over to her house the next morning, and we read him, and it was like, I think this guy can act.
He can actually act.
Yeah, you know, he's playing a young guitar player, but that doesn't mean that you can play yourself even in a movie. You actually have to have that extra something. And so Gary has been full of surprises. That was the first one. Well, I guess his playing was the first one, just how good he was.
Right.
He can really sing, too, you know, and so things just got better.
All came together at that point.
Well, all came together except for the money. So,
well, but that's always the problem,
yeah,
isn't it?
with the script and with Danny Glover, we looked for money for a year and didn't raise a dime. So then we finally decided that with our own money that we had made back from other movies, and I had been writing a lot of screenplays for people.
This is a great way for you to make money. You know,
Yeah. When I get to write, I get paid well, and I can write very fast. So I've been writing a lot of screenplays. We would be able to finance it ourselves, and so the next cotton crop, we were able to, you know, afford 5 weeks of shooting, which is not much for a very ambitious period movie.
Right.
But if you plan really carefully, you can pull it off.
How much money did it cost you to make this movie?
It was $5 million.
Right.
Good chunk of that is music rights. Good chunk of that is Screen Actors Guild, of which I am a member. You have to fly the people first class if it's available. So, you know, airline tickets cost a lot.
Right.
Putting people up in Alabama. And then a period movie always costs more.
Right.
You've got to, you know, find people who have those period cars. You've got to rent period clothes. Find people who are still skinny enough to fit in them, because you know people are bigger than they used to be in 1950. You know, all that stuff is just a little more expensive than just, you know, shooting something like Slacker.